University in the United States has presented its 2024 African Heroes Award to the veteran Gambian politician and educationist Sidi Ajata, who co-founded the People's Organization for Independence and Socialism, DOI, in 1986. The African Heroes Award was created to mark and celebrate the release from prison of the former and late President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. As such, Mandela became the first award recipient in 1991. Since then, the African community at Ohio University has been nominating, voting, and giving the award every spring semester to an African or Africanist who is contributing to the development and advancement of the African continent and people of African descent on the continent or in the diaspora. The former Woodley West National Assembly member was selected for this year's award in recognition of his contributions to education, democracy, and Pan-Africanism. Having been presented with his trophy and certificate at a ceremony at Ohio University on Saturday, Mr. Jata spoke to Coffee Time about the award.
Peter, let me begin by saying what I started with when I made my speech on Saturday. We are all actors on the world stage. And there are people who take interest in what others do and they monitor them. They do so not simply because they like them, but they are concerned about what they do because what they do affects their lives in the world, even though they may not live in the same country. Because what happens in one country affects the world generally, like what is happening today in Ukraine and what is happening in Palestine. I have been involved in a lot of things in my life, and people have been following those who took interest in what I was doing. And this is a culmination of that in a sense. I am humbled by the award because I cannot measure myself up to Nelson Mandela. But I'm very happy that I have been given the honor to share this award with him. I see him as a father and as a mentor and as a comrade. And that is why I'm extremely happy that I have been given the award in the respect that I have been contributing to not only to the development of my country, but to the development of the African continent at large. And to some extent the world. Yes.
And how have you been doing that? How have you been contributing to the development of the African continent and the rest of the world, Honorable Jata?
Well, as a citizen of a country which emerged from decades of colonial administration, I thought that when I was young that I needed to equip myself to contribute first to the liberation of that country from the colonial yoke. So even when I was young in school, at primary school level, I took interest in what was happening in my country, particularly in the domain of politics. So I started learning, I read everything, and I followed those people in politics who interested me and whom I thought were doing what I thought should be done to free our continent and our country. So my development was fortunate in the sense that I had opportunity to go to school in Ghana at a time when Nkrumah was at the height of his presidency. He inspired me, and he was a mentor. And luckily, in the later life of his life, I had opportunity to see him and to be in contact with him. And not only that, but to be in correspondence with him to a point that he found it necessary to publish one of my letters I wrote to him in his book entitled dark days in Ghana. If you read it, you'll find my letter there.
Oh, wow.
So when I went to university too, I decided that I should do something that I can use immediately as a tool to contribute to the liberation of my country, particularly, and this is very important to me, this is my passion, and this is one of the reasons why the award is given to me, that there is a liberation which is fundamental to our independence, and that's the liberation of our continent from alien languages. Peter, you imagine that the country that you and I share, over 80% of the population don't speak English. And this is a country after independence, the fourth generation politicians never thought it necessary to put an end to that. But they just continued exactly what the colonialists were doing. The same alien language which was official continued to be official and is official up to this day. The same colonial language that was used to educate our people continues and still continues to be the same language to be used. So there was a disconnect between those who pretendedly were leading the country and those they pretended to be leading. And so, since there was a disconnect, the huge part of the population, which in fact are the productive forces of the nation, were more or less disconnected from the affairs of the country in a sense. What was said on their behalf in their parliament, they don't know, they didn't know and still don't know. And what was done on their behalf in the administration, they didn't know and still don't know. And whenever they came to contact, to put before those people matters that are important and are still important to them, they had no means of doing that but to use an interpreter in some situations. It's like even when the colonials were there, the same practice continued. So I thought when I went to university, I should study something that will help me to put an end to that by developing our own languages to become apt in being used as languages of scholarship and languages of officialdom. And so I studied linguistics. And when I came back in 1978, the director of education, because I was a teacher, qualified teacher when I went to university, I reported to him and he posted me to the president's office. I refused to go there. He said, why? I said, because my qualifications were not relevant to that, in that office. He said, where are you going? I said, I am going to the Curriculum Development Center. He said, I don't want you to go there. And if you go there, I will not pay you. I said, yes, you can withhold whatever money you have to pay me, but that is where I am going, and that's where my qualifications are relevant, and that is where I think I can serve my nation the best of my ability. So I went there. Curriculum Development Center was created by UNESCO, I think about 1975, and I joined them in 1978, towards the end of 1978. And for 3 years, even though the National Languages Unit existed in the center, nothing happened there for 3 complete because there was nobody of my qualification to do the job. So I went there, and what was not done in 3 years, within 2 months I did what was fundamental, that is designing an orthography, a writing system for the 3 languages that government chose to be taught in the schools. That's the Wolof, Mandinka and Fula. But Peter, the surprising thing was when we did all that and started developing learning materials, the materials were not printed. And there was a center for that purpose, a printing center for that purpose. So for the first phase of our experiment, we had to use handwritten material for 2 solid years, Peter.
Oh, wow.
You would see how enthusiastic and committed I was. We wrote our materials handwritten. And we had 9 schools across the country. 3 for Wolof, 3 for Mandinka, 3 for Fula. And you can imagine the amount of material that we had to write by hand. But we did that, and the experiment went very well. For me, there was no need to experiment anything because the experiments were already done elsewhere. The Igbo project, you must have been heard about that by Professor Fakunwa and others.